Chapter 2. It was about 9:30 at night when Lucifer had woken up. Within the next 5 hours would be his 13th birthday, June 12 of 2032. With his soon-to-be birthday, he was also well aware of the biological changes that would come with it. Turning over, to face Tommy, Lucifer quickly found his friend staring back at him. "Good morning, Lucifer," Tom said just as the sun was going down. Without a verbal response, at first, Lucifer smiled at him and then extended his right arm as he placed it on Tommy's chest. "Good morning," Lucifer said, and then slowly moved himself closer to Tom's body as he then raised his head, up off of his pillow, and then rested it on Tom's chest. Then, as Lucifer moved his head, just enough to look into Tom's face, Lucifer smiled at his friend as he then took into consideration how his 13th birthday would also affect him. "You know, tonight is gonna be a little interesting with my birthday." "Yeah, I know. Are you sure of exactly what changes are gonna happen?" Tom asked as he tilted his chin closer to his own chest to see Lucifer's face. "The flying is the #1 change. I guess. Then, my canines are gonna become venomous." "What do you mean venomous?" Tom interrupted. "That means that, if I bite you anymore, that you too will become a vampire as well. You would grow canines like ours, and then, since your 13th birthday is day after tomorrow, you too would begin to fly just like me, my dad, my Uncle Ronnie, my Uncle Eddie, and Angel." As Lucifer paused, he rubbed on Tommy's chest with the tip of his right index finger, tracing invisible circles into his friend's chest. He then traced a line, from Tom's left side, towards his own chin, as he then relocated his head to where he was looking towards Tom's belly button. Instantly, Lucifer traced an invisible line to Tommy's navel cavity, causing Tom to tighten up his abdomen muscles and give up a slight giggle, as the touch tickled him. Without removing his hand, in fact laying his hand over Tom's belly button, palm down, Lucifer then looked back up to his friend's face. "I love you, Tommy." "I love you too, Lucifer," Tom answered as he then wrapped his right arm up and over Lucifer's side, carefully hugging him. As they both closed their eyes, they both just listened to each other's breath. Together they could hear that someone, or more like a few people, were in the kitchen. With this, combined with the smell of French toast in the air, it felt as though the atmosphere, within the home, was slightly different, perhaps due to Lucifer's upcoming birthday celebration. Above them, both Tommy and Lucifer could hear the slight snore coming from Macaulay as he was still asleep. Then, breaking the otherwise silence within the house, both Tom and Lucifer could hear someone walking down the hallway and then to their bedroom door. Instantly the sound of their door handle being touched turned into a pop as the door opened and then the bedroom light turned on. As the room light was now on, both Lucifer and Tom quickly closed their eyes, as if they were still asleep, as Lucifer kept his head on his friend with his hand remaining on his friend's stomach. "Hey guys." Malachi called out quietly just as he had also knelt down, beside the bed, and draped his arm over both of the older boys. "It's time to get up." Simultaneously, as he finished his sentence, both Tom and Lucifer opened their eyes as they both also smiled back at Lucifer's father. "Oh. You guys playing tricks on me, huh?" Malachi said and then immediately stuck the tips of his fingers into the boys' rib cages, causing both of them to kick and laugh. "We've got breakfast ready out in the kitchen, guys," Malachi said as his nephew then suddenly stuck his head down from the top bunk. "You too, Macaulay. Time to get up and eat." "All right, Uncle Malachi," Macaulay said and then quickly got back up, to his mattress. Seconds later he began to reverse himself, feet first, down the wooden ladder to the bed. "I'll beat you guys out there," the 9-year-old said and then raced out of the room. "Hey guys, listen," Malachi said in now a very serious tone of voice. "Lucifer. As you know, your 13th birthday is tonight. You know that there are gonna be changes within you as well. Changes that none of us know exactly when they'll take effect, and changes that will be great and turn you into a higher form of life, Lucifer. You know what I mean, right? Just my flying and my ability to infect. And your ability to either make or break this family, Lucifer." Malachi interrupted. "With your new abilities you're also opening doors for errors that could expose us." "Tommy," Malachi said as he made eye-to-eye contact with the lad, "soon, probably within the next 48 hours, you too, through either Lucifer, or one of the adults, here in our home, will have the choice of becoming one of us. You know our secrets, you know within your own heart that we are loving people. And we, in our hearts, have all the love in the world for you. And you can consider this to be, beyond the fact that you're already part of the family, an invitation to be one of us. Tommy. You are loved, very much, by Nicole and I. You are loved, very much, by Ronnie, Belinda, Eddie, Angel, Macaulay, and Don D. You are loved, very much, by my parents and my grandmother. And, Tommy. You are loved, very much, by my son. Tommy. We can't force you to become one of us. Please do this through my son. If for any reason that you'd prefer, I can infect you instead. I'm sure, however, that you would have no problem with Lucifer doing it. Tommy and Lucifer. The next 3 days are going to be very eventful. Let's see to it that we do everything that we do within the next 3 days with extreme caution and total safety. I love you guys very much. Give me a hug, guys. Malachi finished and then bear hugged the two boys, together, in a way that acknowledged that Tommy was an equal and with it, equally loved. Alright guys. Let's go eat. As they both watched Malachi get up to his feet, they then both watched him walk out of the room. Once out of sight, Lucifer and Tommy then both looked at each other, the open door, and then each other again. Well. Tommy said, let's go eat. I guess. The breakfast, French toast, just as they previously knew, was great. Then, right after breakfast, the kids, along with Angel, watched some DVD movies while Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, and Nicole all went out for a while. Belinda stayed at the house and assisted Don D in coloring a picture in a coloring book. While watching movies, both Tommy and Lucifer sat on Angel. Yeah. They both sat on him just as if he was a couch. Both Tom and Lucifer were just about to turn 13. Angel, however, who was now 23 years old, looked, in every way possible, younger than both Lucifer and Tommy. Needless to say, it appeared, to Belinda, Macaulay, and Don D, that Angel had the short end of the stick. Before midnight everyone was at home, prepared to eat cake and ice cream, and ready to watch Lucifer open birthday presents that were now piled on the kitchen table. Then, right before blowing out his candles, Malachi told his son to make a wish. This wish was observed by the entire household as they watched Lucifer instantly bow his head, close his eyes, then, moments later, reopen his eyes with a smile that stretched ear to ear as he immediately looked up to Tommy as he stood beside him. A little after 1:30 in the morning, both Lucifer and Tom, along with Don D and Macaulay, were all playing in their bedroom. Entertaining them, Sterling, James, Lloyd, and Scott all played with them as well. Hey, watch this guys, Lucifer said as he had climbed, about halfway, up the ladder to the upper bunk. As he turned around, with the intentions to see how far out he could jump, towards the furthest wall, the moment that he had become airborne, he had instead instantly found himself bouncing off of the bedroom ceiling. Startled, Lucifer quickly turned over, with his belly against the ceiling and attempted to hold on tight with his fingertips and toes. Dad! Lucifer shrieked loudly. The ear-piercing scream made James, Lloyd, Sterling, Scott, Tom, Macaulay, and Don D all damn near jump out of their britches as they all turned to face upwards, towards Lucifer. Simultaneously, Lucifer's father could be heard racing through the kitchen, down the hallway, and then nearly ripping the bedroom door off of its hinges. As Malachi entered the room, he quickly found his son attached to the ceiling and obviously scared by his biological transformation. "I'm here, Lucifer," Malachi said, "just do as I say." As Malachi spoke, he too began to hover right under his son, with his arms open wide. "Look, Lucifer. I'm right here for ya. I'm not gonna let you fall. You understand me?" "Yeah. I understand, Dad." Lucifer answered and then turned his head enough to see that his father was in fact just under him. "Please get me down from here." "Hey, listen," Malachi continued as he had also placed one hand, in the center of his back, supporting most of his weight. "Lucifer, I want you to push yourself towards my hand, bud. In fact, I want you to imagine yourself being held, within my arms, just like when you were younger, and I want you to imagine that in order for you to be held, within my arms, that you must be able to lay your body weight within the palm of my hand. Do this with your eyes closed." All within about 2 minutes, Lucifer was back on the floor and immediately on the road to being taught, by the best, his father, Uncle Ronnie, Uncle Eddie, and Angel, how to fly and move around into whatever direction that he chose. The ability to fly was easily and quickly learned. With his lessons, there were some comical times created as well as Tom stood close to his friend's side between lessons. Along with Lucifer's training, Tom took into heart and memory, the details of which had helped Lucifer to memorize what he had to remain safe when leaving the ground. In all, the training took only about 3 hours, of which Tom had very much enjoyed himself. It wasn't just the flying that both of the boys had very much enjoyed, it was also being included, with the adults, as they had gone back and forth, over the length of the town, throughout that entire 3 hours. When landing upon the back porch of the house, with Tommy within Malachi's arms, it was about 4:30 in the morning. Macaulay and Dondi were just getting out of the bathtub and soon to be in bed. "Hey Tommy," Lucifer whispered loudly, "let's go to our room." Angel had heard the loud whispering between the two teens and had, out of curiosity, walked up to Lucifer, in the kitchen, after Tommy headed off down the hall. "Hey! Are you planning to infect Tommy?" Angel asked as he cupped his hand around Lucifer's ear. "I'd like to. But I don't know for sure that I know how to do it," Lucifer answered honestly. "Well, you remember how you and your dad killed Jason, don't you?" Angel asked. "Yeah. And you've had to have harvested by now. Probably off of Tom. Right?" "Yeah. Several times. Normally in bed." "Well, Lucifer, it's the same thing. You do exactly what you've done in the past when you've harvested off of him. Now, that you're 13, you've got glands, in the roof of your mouth, that causes people to become one of us when you bite them. All you do is harvest. But, now, after you bite Tommy, Tom will pass out. He'll only be asleep for a short period of time. But, when he wakes up, he'll be one of us. If you'd like, I can help you." "Well," Lucifer responded and then paused. "Yeah. Or at least to make sure that I do it right," Lucifer said, and then led the way down the hall and then into his room. As Lucifer and Angel walked in, they found Tommy sitting on the bottom rung of the ladder, to the top bunk, with his shirt off, and leaning forward as he untied his shoes. On the top bunk Macaulay was doing the best that he could to pretend that he was asleep, as he really was trying to ignore the brightness of the bedroom light. "Lucifer, turn off the bedroom light for Macaulay and then turn on the lamp beside your guy's computer," Angel said as he went around Tom and the ladder to sit on the edge of the frame to the bottom bunk. "What's going on?" Tommy asked. Tom had assumed, because of the time, that everyone was headed off to bed. Angel walking into the room, with Lucifer, had caused some slight confusion as he had instantly given Lucifer instructions. "Well Tommy," Lucifer began to explain. "You remember what my dad had said to you last night, right before breakfast, in regards to becoming one of us?" "Yeah. I remember," Tom responded as he kicked off his shoes across the room. "What would you think about becoming one of us right now?" Lucifer asked as he looked into his friend's face. As Lucifer stood in front of Tom, their eyes had met with a feeling like that they were already bonded together by some form of force. Some form of force that had often caused excitement between the two, often bringing them to the sort of play that normally resulted in Lucifer harvesting off of Tommy. "Sure. I'd love to, Lucifer," Tom replied. "Well then Tommy," Angel spoke up, "how about you come on over here and lay down on the bed? Lay down like as if you were going to sleep. Then Lucifer can do what is required for this to happen. Okay?" Standing up, and then immediately taking Lucifer's hand, both Lucifer and Tom went over to Angel's side and then sat down next to him. All that Tommy was wearing was a pair of jeans and a pair of underwear that was obvious by the elastic band that was above the height of the blue jeans. "Go ahead and lay down Tommy. And then you, Lucifer, lay down beside him." As Angel continued to give instructions, he watched Lucifer quickly pull off his own socks and shoes. Then, as he needled his way around Angel, as he still sat on the wooden frame, he laid down. Now, As both of the boys peered into Angel's direction for further instructions, Angel stood up and walked around the end of the bunk, and then got down onto his knees, at the head of the bed, directly behind Tommy. "Just relax, Tommy," Angel said as he placed one arm on either side of Tom's head, yet under his pillow. "Lucifer's gonna do this. I'm only gonna observe and talk Lucifer through the process as well." As Angel continued, Lucifer rolled over, onto his side, and then gently propped his head on Tom's bare chest. "Now Tommy." Angel spoke up again, "I know that Lucifer has harvested off of you before in the past. This is okay, Tommy. Lucifer needs to do that in order to survive. That is all that you guys are gonna do right now also. He's just gonna harvest off of you. Right after that you'll fall asleep. Then, when you wake up, you'll be one of us. This won't hurt Tommy. Okay?" "Alright." Tom replied and then turned his head to where he could face Lucifer. Seconds later, after their eyes had met, they both smiled at one another and then interlocked fingers as Tom had simultaneously lifted his chin, giving Lucifer plenty of area, along the right side of his throat, to take the bite of his life. "I love you, Lucifer." "I love you too, Tom," Lucifer said and then put his entire face into the crook of Tom's neck with his mouth wide open. At first, by what Angel could see, Tom's entire body stiffened and then relaxed as he quickly fell to sleep. For about 2 minutes, after his body had relaxed, Lucifer continued to harvest the warm, thick, rich-tasting blood. Then, as he lifted his head, to look towards Angel, it had appeared that his eyes were illuminated as the light, from the street light out the window, had reflected brightly. As Angel continued to stare Lucifer in the face, he could also then see drops of blood run off of the tips of his canines. Reaching out towards Lucifer's open mouth, with this right index finger, he wiped the blood off of one of the large teeth and then licked it off of his finger. "Good job, Lucifer," Angel whispered. In response, Lucifer only continued to stare deeply into his cousin's eyes. "Hey Malachi." Angel thought as clear as he possibly could, "Tommy is now one of us. Soon." Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, Nicole, and Belinda all filed into the room. Walking into the room, Malachi immediately found his son laying beside Tommy with Angel on the floor at the head of the bed. As Malachi approached his son's side, Lucifer laid on his belly, propped up on his elbow as he stared at Angel. Beside Lucifer, Tommy was on his back unconscious. Kneeling down, beside the bed, Malachi draped one arm over his son and set his hand on Tommy's chest. Stepping up behind Angel, Eddie had rested one hand on Angel's shoulder as he then kneeled down beside him. Behind Malachi, Nicole placed both of her hands on his shoulders, one on each side. "Yeah. He's definitely one of us," Malachi said out loud. Sitting at the foot of the bed, Belinda reached over and held onto Tommy's barefoot. Now, as everyone stood around the bed, Lucifer slowly turned over to face his father. What Lucifer saw was happiness and joy in the choice that he had made involving Tommy. "I did it, Dad," Lucifer said as he smiled. "I know you did, son," Malachi said as he looked over towards Tommy's neck, "and you've done a great job." With this, Malachi lightly hugged Lucifer as he had also visually monitored Tommy's breathing. Then, as Lucifer sat up on the edge of his bed, Malachi took his hand as he walked out with the rest of the family, leaving Tommy to rest in peace. It was now about 5 o'clock in the morning of Lucifer's birthday. With only about another hour and a half until sunrise, Lucifer decided that he would stay up just a little while longer, with the adults, in celebrating the events involved with infecting Tom. And then, Lucifer said, "Tommy will be able to fly day after tomorrow." "Yep." Ronnie answered, "And we'll do plenty of outings that we will all participate in as a family." As Ron finished his sentence, he set down a glass as he finished off a little bit of cold water. "In the meantime, however, I think that it's time for my wife and I to go to bed," he continued and then pulled her close to himself as he looked deeply into her eyes. "I think that we might have enough time to create some excitement for ourselves," Belinda teased and then began to pull him, by his hand, towards the hallway. With the implication, everyone, within the kitchen, smiled at the comment. Seconds later both Ron and Belinda slipped into their bedroom. Walking back into his bedroom, Lucifer found Tom to be in the same position as he was before he left the room. Closing the bedroom shades, before climbing back into bed, He then laid down beside Tommy as he also propped himself up onto one elbow and looked Tom directly in the face. Immediately Lucifer could see the difference in his friend's breathing. Then, as he had also placed his hand on Tom's chest, he could also feel the difference in Tommy's body temperature and heart rate. The knowledge that Tom was now biologically part of the family had caused Lucifer to feel excited. In response to his feelings, Lucifer placed his head on his chest. With the sound of Tommy's racing heart, Lucifer quickly dozed off. It had seemed that it had only been seconds after he had originally felt Lucifer's venomous fluids race through his body. Yet, as he opened his eyes, he had quickly found himself in strange surroundings. With dirt that seemed to embrace each of his toes and up to his ankles, he looked out in front of himself, towards the ground, and found what looked like a small lake. A small lake that had a thick blanket of fog just above it. Looking upward, Tommy found himself in near total darkness. There were only a couple spots of light that seemed to pierce the heavy fog that smelled of mildew. Through that little bit of light, Tom could see small waves or what could be ripples in the dark shaded water. Turning, as he pivoted himself off of the heel of his right foot, he found what looked like a log standing on its end. Walking up to it, he had almost sat down on it as he then suddenly noticed a shine of a red wetness on its top. Bending forward, as he put his nose close to its surface, he quickly swiped his finger through the substance. Standing back up straight, as he put his finger close to his face, to examine the fluid that was thick on his finger, he smelled the substance and found that it was blood. Quickly, Tom wiped his finger off onto the leg of his jeans and then looked back towards the log. There was just a small sliver of light cast over the log. Within the furthest edge of that casted light Tom had found what looked like a large rock sitting on the ground. Moving towards the object, Tom bent forward again as he reached out with his left hand. As his fingers touched it he had also found that, whatever it was, wasn't a rock at all but something that was much lighter in weight. The surface felt on much more dense, like as if it might be hollow. Using both hands to pick the object up off of the ground, he couldn't quite make it out in the dark. Then, as he walked into a beam of light, he put it close to his own face, and suddenly found himself staring into the skull of a dead body. Instantly Tommy dropped the skull and then leaped away from it and into something that caused him to trip. Quickly, spinning his body, Tom attempted to make sure that he had caught himself, with his arms, so that he wouldn't come to a painful stop. Then, as his hands found something, other than dirt. Something that felt like clothing. Clothing that had felt like had been covering a human torso. Instantaneously, just as he had almost identified what it was that he was touching, Tommy quickly tried to throw his body into another direction, as to not allow his fingers to confirm his fears, only to find himself laying on top of what he knew was another body. As he continued to lay on top of this body, Tommy's arms were now too tired to throw his entire body weight back into the air. Also, Tom had feared that another finding could only be worse than what he was already in. Once again, through a layer of clothing, Tom was able to identify the part of the body that was under the weight of his own body. The torso. What Tommy could feel was more than just bones. Through the Tommy could feel flesh with ribs within that flesh. He could feel that the torso was cold to the touch. With this, he could also feel that the way he was laying was the same direction as the body was. The feet near his own feet and then the head. There was no head. Using his hands he felt along the top of the shoulders, up the neck, and then to where he could feel a torn line of flesh rather than the victim's. As he continued to lay on the torso, Tom now reached outward with his hands as he searched for any area of ground that may be big enough for him to at least get back up to his feet without tripping or falling to the ground again. As he reached, however, he had found what felt like a hair-covered head. At last. Tom thought to himself, a whole body. That positive thought was quickly washed away. He found that the head, that he had in his hands, was not connected to a body. Furthermore, Tommy had quickly discovered that this head had extended canines. Vampires. Quickly jumping to his feet, Tom had began to walk away, feeling with his toes, for any obstacles, away from the direction of the water, log, and dead bodies. Only about 30 seconds into his walk, as Tom tried moving as quietly as he could possibly muster, he had suddenly heard a splash coming from the direction of the water that he had just left behind him. Turning, to look behind him, Tommy couldn't see anything and then decided to just push on. Turning his head, to see in front of himself, he suddenly came to a bone-crushing stop as he had run into something, causing him to fall back onto his butt. At first, as Tom remained sitting, he had felt a combination of pain, fright, of whatever it was that he could hear walking towards him from behind, and anger that had instantly spurred when he ran into. Opening his eyes, as he felt a trickle of blood running down the side of his cheek, he could just barely make out what looked like a wall of rock. Then, just as he heard footsteps behind him, again, he quickly found his way to his feet. Following the wall to the right, Tommy tried to pick up speed as fast as he could, yet also being cautious as he kept one arm extended in front of himself. As he kept moving, once in a while he could also hear the movement behind him. It wasn't just regular footsteps that he heard, it was a step followed by a dragging noise. Like as if someone had a lame leg as they continued to pursue him. It had seemed that it was the very second that Lucifer had fallen asleep that he had awoken to Tommy shaking and kicking in his sleep. As he pushed himself up to one elbow, he tried to hold Tom and found that he was sweating badly in his sleep. "Dad. Tommy's having a nightmare. Help me." No longer had the thought left his mind. He had then also heard his father coming out of his room across the hall. Seconds later, Malachi had walked into his son's room and approached the side of the bed. "Hey buddy," Malachi said as he sat beside Lucifer. Then, as he reached over his son, towards Tommy, Malachi rested the palm of his hand on Tommy's chest. "He'll be alright. I'll stay here with you guys until he wakes up," Malachi whispered. "I didn't think that Tom would have a nightmare this quick, Dad," Lucifer said as he too held on to his friend. As Lucifer waited for his father's response, he could also hear that either Ronnie or Belinda were moving around in their room. "It's hard to tell sometimes, Lucifer," Malachi whispered. "When I infected your mother years ago, she had a nightmare immediately afterwards also." Looking up, towards the bedroom door, Malabi could see the silhouette of his brother, in only his boxers, standing and watching. "A nightmare already?" Ron asked as he walked into the room. "Yeah." Lucifer answered his uncle. "I'm surprised that he hasn't even yelled or screamed though." "Probably because Miguel isn't chasing him," Ronnie whispered. "You can sure tell that Tom is running though," Malachi said as he looked up to Ronnie. "Put your hand on Tommy's chest. It feels like his little heart is gonna jump right out of his rib cage." Before Malachi had finished his sentence, Ron had sat down at the foot of the bed as he reached over Tommy's and Lucifer's legs towards the center of Tom's chest. Right beside Lucifer's and Malachi's. "Yeah. He's running all right," Ron agreed as he had simultaneously felt the fast heartbeat and also felt Tommy's legs shaking as well. "Damn man," Sterling said as Lloyd, James, Scott, and himself also watched over Tommy. "I'm surprised that Tommy's having this nightmare so quickly too." All four of the guys had been in the room since the moment that Angel had explained to them how to go through the process of infecting Tom. "I think that all of this stuff is weird," Scott said. As the four of them stood at the head of the bed, they all paid enough attention to know that Tommy was having what was more of a mild nightmare rather than one that would have caused any serious problems to Tom's safety. Remember that one nightmare that Angel, Ronnie, Malachi, and Lucifer had? The one that Miguel almost killed Angel in. "That was the worst," Lloyd commented. "Almost killed Angel?" Scott asked in shock. "Yeah. That's the kind of power that this monster has over this family," James added. "This family or vampires in general?" Scott asked as he seemed to have become very curious over the dreams. "Vampires in general," Lloyd said. "You see, when any vampire dies, he or she gets a dying wish. Years ago, back in 1921, when Miguel Sanchez was executed, he had blamed his family for police catching on to him. Then, after his execution, he had decided for his wish, that he would terrorize his whole family for the rest of eternity. Now, in response to that dying wish, everyone has nightmares about him all of the time." And then, James continued, "When Miguel's wife, Elizabeth Sanchez, died in 1930, her dying wish was that once an individual knew all of the people, within their dreams, that those people's dreams would come to an end." "Why would his wife do something against his wishes?" Scott asked. "You see," Lloyd spoke up again, "Elizabeth is the one that turned him in. But, since she wouldn't tell him the truth, in fear that he would escape before he would be executed and, in turn, kill her. He put the wish against the whole family. Is there any way that another dying wish could put the dreams to an end? Scott asked as he too reached out towards Tom and felt the sweat on his forehead. No. A dying wish cannot be wished away. Lloyd said, the wish can be enhanced by another, or added to another wish. But no dying wish can be put to an end. As Malachi continued to watch over Tommy, as he sat on the edge of the bottom bunk, he had also observed a buildup of sweat on his forehead. Then, just as the thought went through his mind, to have either Ronnie or himself to go get a towel or washcloth, the sweat had suddenly, right before his eyes, been swiped completely off of his forehead just the same as windshield wipers wipe rain off of a window. Hello Sterling, James, Lloyd, and Scott. Nice to see that you're also watching over the kids. What did you see? Ronnie asked his brother. Then, before Malachi even answered his brother, Ronnie had seen the perfectly clear spot on Tommy's forehead. Simultaneously, just as Ron had noticed this, Malachi had raised his hand up off of Tom's chest and pointed towards his forehead. Moments later, Malachi put his hand back onto Tommy's chest. Is Tommy gonna be alright, Dad? Lucifer asked. Shocked by the question, Malachi put his other arm over Lucifer's shoulder and pulled him close to himself. Of course he's gonna be alright, bud. You've seen more than your share of these nightmares before. Pausing, as he held on just a little tighter to Lucifer, he tilted his head forward enough to plant a kiss on his 13-year-old's forehead. You really do care about him, don't you? Yeah. Lucifer responded as he had also lightly cried. As Malachi saw a few tears roll down his son's face, he instantly removed his hand off of Tom as he then wrapped both of his arms around Lucifer and picked him up, to turn him towards himself, as he held on tightly to the frightened child. I love him, Dad, Lucifer cried a little louder. I know that you love him, Lucifer, Malachi said as he held on just a little tighter, but you've gotta remember, now that he is one of us, that he too is gonna have nightmares. I know, Lucifer said as even more tears began to come down, it's just that I know that he's scared and we can't do anything about it. As his son continued to speak, a tear ran down Malachi's cheek also. Knowing how his brother was feeling, by knowing his son's pain, Ronnie raised his hand and placed it on Malachi's back. Then, out of the corner of Ron's eye, he saw Tommy beginning to wake up. Hey guys. Tommy's waking up. Instantly, just as the words left Ronnie's mouth, Lucifer raised his chin up off of his father's shoulder and saw that Tommy's eyes were opening. Daddy. He's alright. With his son's words, Malachi let Lucifer back down onto the bed where he had immediately began to hug his friend. Hey Tommy. Malachi spoke up, you are one of us now. And now, just like you've watched with Lucifer and Macaulay, you too will have regular nightmares. Also Tommy. We all love you very much. You guys better get to sleep, it's almost sunrise. About 9:30 that night, June 13th of 2032, both Tommy and Lucifer woke up as they continued to lay in bed. Without talking, they went through about an hour's period of time of playing with the ESP that was totally new to Tommy. It was through this ESP that Lucifer had learned of the content of Tommy's nightmare earlier that same day. Lucifer was shocked by what he had learned about Tommy's nightmare. In fact, it had shocked him enough that he had brought the issue to his father right after they had both gone out for breakfast. Hey Dad, Lucifer said as the boys sat down for eggs, toast, and sausage, I think that you should know about the content of Tommy's nightmare. What do you mean? Malachi asked as he passed the bowl of sausage to Angel. Tommy found himself around a bunch of dead vampires. These vampires were decapitated and all laying around a chopping block, or what Tommy said was a log with blood covering its top. As Lucifer finished his sentence, he looked towards Tom for confirmation that what he had just said was accurate. He also said that there was some sort of lake near that log also. Turning his head to face Tommy, Malachi began to question Tom as well. Did you see an old man chasing you? No. Tommy answered. There was someone following me though. Far behind me I could hear stepping. Whoever it is though must have a bad leg because each normal step was followed by a dragging sound? That dragging sound is from Miguel. Ron spoke up. Miguel is a bad person, Tommy. Pausing as he took a bite off of his fork, don't let him catch you. He can hurt you. Also, once in the past, he even tried to kill Angel. It almost worked. The conversation about Tommy's first nightmare created a lot of questions. Beyond that, it had also painted a picture, in everyone's minds, of the possible doom surrounding Miguel Sanchez. The thought of how he had almost killed Angel was now replaced with the knowledge that Miguel had killed other vampires. As they had finished their breakfast, Malachi had decided, to himself, that a map of the dungeon that they had all seen several times over and over, needed to be drawn out as part of keeping better documentation of the nightmares. Just like the little black book that Sterling's grandmother had left behind. Shortly after the dishes, from breakfast, were washed and with the ordeal surrounding Miguel weighing harder on everyone's mind, it was decided that it was time to have a long discussion with the only mentors that they had grown up with. A discussion that would involve everyone, including James, Lloyd, Sterling, and Scott, in helping to guard those within the home. So, what exactly did you see, Tommy? James asked. It was no surprise that the family would want to do a seance right after Tommy had his first dream. In fact, Sterling knew that just the fact that Tom was now a vampire would prompt a seance. There were no complaints though, everyone looked forward to the chance to talk to one another. Well, I remember opening up my eyes near a lake or pond. I don't know, just some sort of body of water. I was standing in dirt. The dirt was damp, stuck to my feet anyhow. Then, as I began to walk away from this lake, through the darkness and heavy fog, I saw a log. When I looked down at the log, when I was standing beside it, I saw something shiny on top of it. Like as if it was wet or something. I put my finger on it and then smelled the tip of my finger. As Tommy went on and on of each step that he had taken, within the dream, Malachi, as he only listened, drew a portion of a would-be map of the labyrinth that Miguel ruled over. As Tommy had completed his details of the nightmare, the interrogation quickly moved on to the person sitting beside him. Lucifer. Just the same as Tom, Lucifer described many details that he had remembered from past nightmares. After Lucifer it then went on to Ronnie, and then after Ron on to the next person, until finally, after about 2 hours, Malachi had drawn up a map of the dungeon. Pieces of information from over a couple hundred years worth of experience that had amounted to a well-detailed map. Then, as Dawn D had carefully recited the memory of her nightmares, Malachi passed his drawing around the circle as he had also saw the look of approval in everyone's face. This map included an area filled with caskets, an area of which was within an interactive nightmare that Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, Lucifer, Belinda, and Angel were all in. This was the nightmare of which Angel had come close to dying. In the map was Tommy's experience. There was an area that looked like a maze, that Nicole had experienced. There was an old dog, must have belonged to Miguel, that Eddie had a run-in with. In that dream, after Eddie had ran from the dog, he too had come across what he felt was a lake of blood. It was now decided that it was the same body of fluids that Tom had seen. It was determined that the area of which the caskets were, was elevated much higher than everything else. This included a set of stairs to and from that elevation. Now, Malachi said, it's just the matter of what do we do with this information. Use it, within your memory. Sterling answered. As a tool in trying to get away from Miguel. Who knows, maybe later it could be the tool that you need to destroy Miguel. Destroy Miguel? Eddie repeated. That was an idea that had never been mentioned before. Everyone, within the family had just simply grown accustomed to the horror of the nightmares. Nobody lad ever thought about destroying the problem. Yeah, Eddie. Sterling said, put an end to all of the problems. Guys. All of you guys deserve so much more out of life than what you're getting. Miguel has been a problem for your family for many generations. None of you deserve it. Soon, the attention was placed on Tommy. Everyone knew, that within just a few hours, that Tommy would also be 13 years old. For Tommy himself, everything was just happening too fast. It's gonna be alright, Malachi said as he leaned towards Tom and hugged him. We, as a family, will see to it that everything goes just right for you. Well, Tommy. Lloyd said as it was now his turn to talk, you do have a big support team here. I think that you're pretty darn lucky for someone that's going through as much as you are. Yeah. Tom responded as he then also looked around the entire circle. This is the best family that I know of. Closing his eyes as he thought about his biological family that had abandoned him, he continued, and the best family that I've ever had. With this said, both Ronnie and Malachi looked at the 12-year-old and smiled. And Tommy. Lloyd continued, everyone here loves you very much too. Then, as Tommy looked up to face Lloyd, Lloyd winked at him. Well guys. I think that it's about time to bring this seance to an end. James Scott, Sterling and I love you guys a lot, and Tommy. You and Lucifer be extremely careful over the next few days. Don't allow your powers to cause problems or get you hurt. And remember that, even though you are vampires, you can still get hurt. So be careful. Well, Eddie said as he stood up to his knees, you guys have a good day. We've gotta get some things done in preparation for Tommy's birthday. Okay guys. See ya. Lloyd said just as he walked out of the light. Then, seconds later, they watched the guys all head up the stairs with Macaulay and Dondi following behind. What all do we need from the store? Ron asked just as they reached the top of the steps. On the way up the stairs, Ron had began to horseplay with Eddie, causing him to tangle the string that they were using for the seance. On top of the new string that we're gonna need? Eddie asked. I think that we should get some DVDs, some other kind of ice cream, other than the vanilla that we have, and also, I think, that maybe we should get some chips, soda. I'm starving. Eddie admitted, let's just get something to fill us up. Sounds like that it's time to harvest, Malachi said as he turned to pour some coffee. Obviously breakfast alone didn't do it. Well, we don't exactly have a candidate to harvest off of right now, Eddie said as the thought of chips and soda grew bigger in his mind. He did know, however, that he did in fact need to harvest as well though. Can't you harvest off of me? Tommy asked. Not no more. Ron answered, you're a vampire, vampires can't harvest off of each other. In response to Ron's words, a look of question crossed Tommy's face. What would happen if we did try to harvest off of each other? Tom asked as he followed Ronnie into the living room. Actually, Ron said as he simultaneously looked back towards Eddie and Malachi for help in answering the question, we don't really know, our grandmother had told us that we can't. Maybe one day, Lucifer said as he jokingly picked up his father's hand, we'll have to try it. As he raised his father's hand close to his own mouth, he opened his jaws wide as he pretended that he was gonna bite.